Welcome everybody to Web3 Sales Gym. Today we're speaking with Alex from Fortis company, and Alex has been a great story of building out and working out in sales with enterprises. He has been the guy who's been getting all of those big whales to our ecosystem. So today I'm super happy that he found a few minutes to spend with us and tell us all his secrets. So welcome to the show, Alex.
Great to be here, Nikolai. Thank you.
Before we start, anything you want to add?
I guess I'll just say, I've been in digital assets and kind of dealing with crypto and enterprises since about 2017. So it's been kind of a long road of seeing different cycles with enterprises, and it's good to say the maturation has certainly gotten to a point where enterprises are taking a serious look at digital assets. And I know there was a colloquial term that the institutions were here in the kind of 2020 to 21 cycle, but I think you can definitively say that that is now actually true, as there's more and more real enterprises in actual business, not just only looking at the technology, but actually starting to use the technology, which I think is a big difference as of late.
True. So let's help our viewers to capitalize to capitalize massively on this moment. So how do you even start talking with an enterprise? How do you get in touch with them? How do you get this first foot in the door?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it changes quite honestly with every different type of enterprise. The role that I'm in and what Fortris is we're a digital asset treasury platform. So if you want to hold digital assets, if you want to operate on digital assets, if you want to move digital assets, that's kind of what our forte is and how we've built the platform. So that necessarily leans itself into financial type folks. So CFOs, treasurers, investment committees, folks that are interested in kind of the investment opportunity, and also cross-border payments, remittances, sending fund flows to different subsidiaries amongst their organization. Those are the types of folks that we talk to. So it really is kind of funny how digital assets can be a very fine point of an industry of just this entire industry is just digital assets as a whole. But really, when you go one layer deep, there's so many different things in that. You have the NFTs and the collectibles. You have stable coins and cross-border payment flows. You have Bitcoin as a potential store of value opportunity. You have all these different enterprise type blockchains for storing information in various ways. It's really a fascinating industry to be in, because there is so many different ways that institutions are looking at it, right? You have Nike and Adidas and these Disney, right, looking at NFTs as loyalty and collectibles, right? And then you have let's just say MicroStrategy of the other side looking at it as an investment, and then you have anyone that Circle or Tether is working with that are saying, let's just digitize the dollar and we can send these dollars across the globe
Got it.
so much faster. So it's a really interesting question, Nikolai, and I think it really depends on kind of who you're talking to and what angle you're coming from.
So is it best to send them an email, get and connect with them on the event? I don't know, send them a present and then say, hey, we're from Web3, we want to talk with you, and all. So how do you approach them?
Yeah, the fortunate part about being in this cycle, I'd say, is every large company at this point has at least taken a position on digital assets. They at least understand what it is. They've heard of crypto. They've heard of Bitcoin. So that is a very fortunate aspect where you don't have to go through necessarily that education cycle as much.
Okay.
There's certainly still a lot of that there, but it is easy to find someone that cares about this technology in many of these large institutions. A lot of these firms will either have dedicated teams. You can think of the banks, a lot of the big retail firms. They typically have like an innovation or a web3 or an NFT or whatever kind of the angle is. They have those dedicated teams already built out. So it's pretty easy to find those types of folks. But otherwise, it's really a use case perspective, right? Are you interested in growing your loyalty? Okay, I'm going to try to find someone on that type of team. Am I talking about payments? Okay, let me try and see if I can find someone that's on the payments team or the treasury team. So it really depends on kind of the aspect that the business is operating in, and then using your understanding of the technology and understanding of your perspective is and saying, okay, how could this type of company find this interesting, right? Is it, if I want to sell more sneakers and add collectibles to it, that's certainly an avenue in, or this person sending, global remittance platforms around the globe. Okay, I'm going to try and find someone in the finance organization.
Okay, so golden nugget from this. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So conferences, more and more traditional businesses are going to the Web3 conferences.
We see a lot of
Consensus,
them, yeah.
Paris Blockchain Week, Bitcoin, you name it. But honestly, I was just at Eurofinance conference here in California, and that's ran by the Economist organization, right? So the global magazine, the global sort of well-respected publication puts on this it's called Eurofinance, about treasury and finance and moving money, and talking about how do you manage business with dealing with banks and currencies and FX, right?
Yeah.
And we go to that conference nowadays, and I would stand up, to ask the questions to everyone. Hey, have you thought of Bitcoin? Hey, have you thought about moving, digital assets as instead of, move through the banking system? And nearly everyone in that room, again, at least has an understanding at this point in time of what the opportunity is and what the technology can do. Whether or not they're doing anything totally different, but there is that level of maturation that you don't have to go just to the crypto events anymore, that
Sure.
actually the technology is moving its way into the mainstream.
And that's the best part. It's amazing to see that we are not only small group that is just located somewhere else, but we are more part of the family right now. All right.
Exactly.
And another question, just from your experience, I know that enterprise deals, they typically take longer, sometimes way longer than the regular deals. From your experience, how long does it take to land a good enterprise partnership or a deal, and why do you think it is so long?
It's so long because there's so many people that need to get on board. I think that's the short answer to it. And the bigger the change, the more people that need to get on board, and the more people that need to get on board is the longer the sales cycle, because there's more and more people that you need to convince. I think what's interesting about enterprise sales is it really takes a strategic lens to be able to apply and say the right messaging to the right people. And oftentimes you're not in an enterprise sale selling to someone, you're actually selling through someone. So it's
Interesting, yeah.
very easy. It's very easy, and I think the easiest part is to get that internal champion, we'll call them, that person that goes to the Eurofinance conference and says, "Hey, I'm interested in Bitcoin, or I'm interested in digital assets because I think it's going to do X, Y, and Z to my specific role." Or individually or personally, they find the technology fascinating and they want to bring it into their companies. That's relatively easy to find, and those people are becoming more and more prominent. But it's selling that idea through that person, because they need to go and talk to various groups around their organization. It's not just one person that you need to get to say yes. It's probably upwards of 20 to 25 people.
Wow.
And you're not going to be talking to all of those people, right? You're going to be talking to one, maybe two, maybe up to five. But it's
And they're
really
going to be facing all of them.
Exactly. If I sell a treasurer that says, "Yep, that's a great idea. I want to move my cross-border payments on using digital asset networks," they may absolutely agree with that and think it's a great ROI and say yes, 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 yes. Now they need to go talk to their board. They need to go talk to their legal team. They need to go talk to their compliance teams. They need to talk to their technology teams. The thing with digital assets is it's not just a single platform. It is a really large revolutionary change. And there's a lot of different people that have to get involved. And that's what makes it so complicated. So it really takes a strategic lens. Who am I talking to? What is the message that they're going to say? And then what is the message that they are going to need to say themselves? And how do I arm them with that?
Okay, that's valuable insight. Another question is like a follow-up to this one. So how can a sales rep that is dealing with this enterprise, how can they fasten this sales cycle? So how can they influence what they can do to make this shorter and make sure that more people are jumping in more effectively with their idea?
Yeah, another great aspect of being, in a maturing industry at this point, I would say, is there's a lot of resources out there. So, not only does a salesperson have to have all of the information material and speak the language of the legal teams and speak the language of the CFO and speak the language of the enterprise technical teams, there's a lot of resources that already exist out there, right? You can go to Chainalysis for anything that has to do with compliance, right? You can go to Michael Saylor if you want to talk about Bitcoin, right? There's so many different angles and resources out there that I think leaning on those resources and finding the right voice to match with the right person to have the right conversation. I think that's where it becomes very strategic for the salesperson to say, okay, who am I talking to? What do I think that their concerns on based on the industry, based on what you can understand from that initial sales call, based on how mature it is, and is it really a bottom up or top down initiative?
Yeah.
I've had conversations with CFOs at large organizations where they themselves, the CFO, are saying this is something I want to do, and that becomes a lot easier because they have the executive presence, right? They have the ability to move things
Power,
quicker
always
through the
watching and
organization.
saying, you have a ultimate approval. Yeah.
Exactly. So that always makes it much easier if you have that sort of level buy-in. But if you're going the other direction, right, it's how do you arm this person? How do you arm that internal champion? How do you arm that stakeholder with the right resources to go have those conversations when you're not going to be in that room? And I think there's a lot of resources out there today that you don't need to go out and make them yourself, but you need to have all of them in your holster, so to speak, are readily available where you can speak to them, present them at the right time, point them to the right paragraph or the right situation, and be able to provide that information at the right time and in the right format.
Cool. I think that's going to be super valuable for everybody who's listening. Either go and get a very high buy-in, or arm your people with a very good materials, so they can go and they're like your army, so they can go and they can just promote and basically do the job where you can do it.
Exactly.
But what about you going to multiple people within different departments and trying to multi-thread? So like, what's your, have you seen that plays a good role, or it's better to leave it up to this person, to your internal champion, to do majority of the work because you may do some mistakes? Or how do you navigate this role of multi-threading in enterprises with large organizations?
Yeah, it's extremely important, Nikolai, and I think that's probably the consistent piece around any enterprise, not specific to Web3 and crypto, but any sort of enterprise sale is how do you get multiple touch points? Do you get name recognition? Do you get that trust, and you build up that that trust within the organization beyond just that one person? You're absolutely right, and I think it's really important to figure out where they think the next steps are too. So it's often a question that I'll ask once you find that internal champion, once you get that first phone call, once you get that follow-up phone call. Okay, what do they think is next, right? Do you think it's going to be a legal concern at your business? Okay, let's go talk to that legal team, right? Let's go ask for that meeting and say, hey, I talk to legal teams all the time. I can become well prepared, and give them the confidence to exude that says, okay, great. I'm not going to look silly bringing Alex or Nikolai into this conversation with my legal team. They are well prepared. So you have to almost sell them to say, hey, okay, what do you think the next conversation is in your organization? And then how do I convince you that you're going to allow me to take you there, and that we're going to have a productive conversation and everyone's going to come out looking smarter, right? So I think it does shift, right? It does shift from it goes, okay, I've sold you, to now say I'm selling you to bring me into the next call, and figuring out what that next call is something that you allow them to do, right? Because they know the internal dynamics, the internal politics, the internal people that hold the power, right, in some of these organizations.
True.
So it's really kind of a dance, if you will, right? It's okay, I need to convince you. Who do you think you need to go convince? And then how do I convince you to take me to that meeting so I can make sure it's going to be effective? And while all you're doing that, you're arming them, preparing them, and talking to them. So in terms of multi-threading, you can do that in a few ways, right? If it's a technology driven team, okay, you can have a tech conversation on one side. If it's a finance driven team, you can talk to the finance people somewhere else. They don't all necessarily need to be in the same meeting, but it's good to have more and more threads, because to your point, right, having more and more roads into an organization, it's going to help that acceleration. It's going to help shorten those sales cycles.
There's even like few strategies where the more people you have, the more people you know, the more threads you have open up, the higher probability that you're going to close the deal. So my last question to you, before jumping to the Blitz section, is going to be, how do you end this sales cycle? So how does the closure typically happens with these large enterprises?
Yeah, it can range in a whole flurry of ways. It can either be relatively quick if you have a CFO level buy-in and the board's bought in and everyone's ready to go, and they came looking for you. Those are the best, because those often move the quickest. Or sometimes, right, if you're trying to convince them, I've had sales cycles that are multiple years, and you just become that trusted advisor where, okay, they're interested in digital assets or crypto or what have you. They like your advice because you provided value every time that they've talked to you, that they keep coming back every time they have a question, right? And they keep bringing you back into conversations, and they keep looping you in. So it really depends. It's your job to get to that trusted advisor standpoint, because that gets you more meetings. It's your job to provide value at those points of the meeting, so they continue to have you at the top of mind and continue to want to bring you in. But you can only accelerate it so far, right? Because there is a sweet spot of, if you push too hard, you can become across as, oh, this isn't a trusted advisor anymore. They're trying to push something. And you go too slow, right? Well, now it's okay. It's not top of mind for them. It's not
the dance continues.
The dance continues, and I think that's the throughput through all of it, right? It's really matching up and knowing your client, understanding your client, thinking strategically, and being able to do the dance properly all the way through.
I'm thinking whether if you go and start dancing like as a hobby, whether it's gonna help you to be better in sales, because you're just learning the motion and then you just go and apply the same skills that you learned physically and you do this with the deal.
That's right. That's right. I think learning a quick step wouldn't be too bad to bring into a sales cycle for sure.
All right. Let's jump to the Blitz questions, like something that is super easy and super quick. What do you think is the best event to meet Web3 enterprises or enterprises interested in Web3 and crypto and all these things?
Yeah, I've been to most of the sort of Web3 events. I will say internationally has gotten a lot more traction. It used to be relatively, I'd say US centric between, Bitcoin Miami, Consensus, Digital Asset Summit. I do think there's a lot of different perspectives, right? There's like, NFT Paris, NFT NYC. If you're doing more of the collectible loyalty, that type of aspect, the retail focused sort of entities, those events can be wonderful. I've been to Consensus. It's much more finance driven. It's much more investment driven. It's much more corporate driven. That's a great organization. That's a great event as well, right? You see the trading houses there, the stock exchanges are there, and then you have the ones that we've been to, right? The Euro finances of the world, the ones that aren't necessarily digital assets, but digital assets are actually coming into those types of conferences because the technology has gotten so mature. So it really, I think, depends on where you are, what you're trying to do, and who your target audience is. I'm going to Paris Blockchain next week. It's
Awesome.
kind of a mix over there, right? It is very Web3 centric, but again, you kind of see more and more of these institutions that end up going to these types of events because they are looking at it as a strategic angle for their businesses to continue to grow. The technology is getting relatively sophisticated, and now they're actually putting themselves into the Web3 specific events. But I think it happens both directions now.
Okay, interesting. Next question. So, how do you think if somebody is just out of the school, and is it possible that they can come in and learn how to dance right off the bat, or you need to go and you need to start smaller, like in a lot of enterprises? Actually, right now, I've heard from more and more people that they start hiring people directly to become a BDR or an SDR for an enterprise, and then you can get a promotion to account executive and be there. But it's still in a lot of organizations, you still need to start at SMB, then go to mid-market, and then only then you have an entry to enterprise. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I didn't take that direct route. I actually was a consultant at one of the big four consulting firms out of undergrad, and that's actually where I started doing crypto or doing digital assets back in 2016. So I can't comment specifically, but I will say I think the further you get into the cycle in being able to do that dance, you're going to learn different skills, right? So I learned how enterprises work by being on the inside and not necessarily doing sales, but understanding how projects get done, how there's a sales cycle to selling consulting work, and really understanding how enterprises move. I think starting out in a sales role, you're absolutely going to learn how to do that dance to get that meeting, right, to provide value in different ways. So I think the short answer is there's multiple ways to get to where you want to be, and there's multiple skills you're going to learn no matter what path you take. I think if it's something that's interesting to you and a path that you think you're going to be good at, absolutely pursue it. But there's I think right answer to get to where you want to be, and there's certainly multiple avenues as you grow throughout your career.
Exactly. Follow your dream, folks. If you feel that it's the right thing to do right now, then do it. All right. Free last question. Top one reason why you think institutions come to Web3.
So that could be a very long answer. I'll try to be brief. I do think it is, there's so many analogies out there, and there's so many smart people in this space that have probably made better, long-winded answers that are much more poignant. But I do think I look at sort of blockchain, digital assets, whatever you want to call it, as the next layer of the internet, right? It's an internet level type of technology advancement. I think there's a lot of analogies again that are being made that were kind of in the late 90s, if you want to drop back to the internet era, but it's really fundamentally a new type of technology, right? Where you can read, write, and store. If you use kind of the Chris Dixon A6 or A16Z methodology there. So I think it's only going to get bigger, and I think institutions are coming here because they are starting to realize that the technology is here to stay, is not going away, and they're trying to figure out how to best use it in their institutions. that certainly changes, and it's faster based on the type of institution. Again, an NFT use case, it makes a lot of sense and it's really easy to do, or really easy for adoption because collectibles have always been a thing. I think that is why you're seeing early use cases there. As an investment, product as Bitcoin and Ether, right? That things get financialized relatively early and soon, if there's money to be made, right? So you're seeing that, but I do think those next layers are starting to get peeled back, and I think you're only going to see more and more and more adoption throughout more traditional institutions. So I think technology is here to stay. It's only going to continue to grow, and I think institutions are looking at it and realizing that, and now starting to peel back more and more layers of the onion and adopting the technology deeper into their organizations.
True, and they understand it. Another question. So enterprise deals are typically harder than the regular ones. Do you think that enterprise reps, they make more in Web3 than other reps? Because in some industries, mid-market AEs, SMB AEs, they make as much, if not more, but it depends on the industry, it depends on the company. How do you feel? Like, what do you see in the market with the people? Should you pursue this career for an upgrade in status, in your financial and all this stuff?
Yeah, I actually can't speak directly to that because, as I said, I kind of came into this from a more of a passion interest than a monetary interest. But I will say, I do think that this technology is here to stay. I think it's only going to become more important. So if it's not the case where you're making more money today, I certainly think in 5, 10, 15 years, having that experience is going to be something that's going to be more valuable to be able to build upon. So in the short term, I don't really know the answer. You probably could make more in a more, faster moving, more of a high volume, industry. But I do think, again, that this industry is here to stay. So I think you should value that with getting this experience and getting the knowledge earlier in your career of this type of industry, of the technology, and speaking to these types of industries and types of firms really that are doing with it, and weigh that with a long-term perspective in mind of saying, is this more valuable to me in the future than it is today?
Alex, what people should read, what kind of information they should consume to become more like you, to learn how to do these enterprise deals? Like, where should they go?
Yeah, I think being super knowledgeable about the industry and the technology is deeply important. I think, again, become that trusted advisor. Every sale is complicated. Every sale is different. It's more engaging, I think, mentally stimulating than it is to repeat sell the same thing over and over. Because the chair I sit in and doing enterprise sales in Web3, every client is different. It's always a little bit of a different use case. They always have a little bit different concerns, whether it's legal, whether it's technology, what have you. So you really need to be knowledgeable throughout all these different aspects of not only the sales cycle, but the industry itself, right? You need to be able to speak on that. You need to know what the good resources are. You need to know who the good information sources are. So I think getting knowledgeable is always going to be step one. I'm a big podcast fan. I won't recommend any, but there's a ton of good crypto podcasts out there.
Sure.
If you're just starting out, 20 minutes a day, just start down the path, and you'll be shocked by how much you can actually learn without even realizing it. But you just got to start today, right? So do a little bit today, a little bit more tomorrow, and eventually you'll be super knowledgeable. And then when you go out and you have those conversations, you'll be speaking the language in no time, and you'll be ready, prepared for it. So I think my advice would be just to start today. Find what you enjoy about it, find what you like about it, find out why it's interesting to you, and keep chasing that interest.
All right. I think everybody who wanted to hear that, they heard it, and they're going and they're doing action. Alex, thank you so much for your time and for the insight that you shared with us. I'm going to leave all the links, so if you want to connect with Alex or what they do at Fortis, or if you're an enterprise head of executive, or like you want to do something in Web3, check out Alex, because he knows his stuff, and he's going to make sure that your organization is navigating the crypto landscape securely and in the most efficient way. It was a big pleasure to have you on the call, and see you later, maybe for the next episode in a couple of months.
Nigel, I thank you so much. Great to be here, and yes, take care. Speak soon.
See you.